Today, I'll be taking you through some of the emerging security threats posed by Agentic AI and the current frontier models, starting with some charts and benchmarks, then talking through the details of the OpenAI and Hugging Face breach that you've probably seen on the news. Welcome to Berry Talks Data, where I talk about all things data, AI, and things that caught my attention recently. The opinions shared here are my own and do not reflect the position of my employer. To start us off, from back in April 2026, the UK's AI Security Institute published this chart which shows average steps completed on the last ones, which is a 32-step simulated corporate network attack plotted against cumulative token spend on a log scale along the x-axis. Claude Mythos preview shown in red leads averaging roughly 22 of 32 steps at 100 million tokens, and its best runs approaching full network takeover. As you can see, every model makes more progress as the token budget grows. Milestones are shown inside the y-axis as M1 to M9 and run from initial reconnaissance at M1 all the way to full network takeover at M9. This next chart is from Epoch AI and published at the start of July. It shows the monthly disclosures of high and critical severity CVEs, which is a cybersecurity term that stands for common vulnerabilities and exposures. These disclosures sat between roughly 150 and 350 from 2022 through to early 2026, then spiked after the release of Anthropic's Mythos in April. June 2026 saw around 1,500 high to critical CVEs, more than 3.5 times the previous monthly record. This data aggregates 21 named vendors, including all the hyperscalers, Linux, and OpenSSL, and this clearly shows that the release of Mythos was not just hype. This is a more recent AI Security Institute run of the same 32-step, the last one's cyber range, including the new GPT models. I sourced this chart from the OpenAI disclosure post for this recent incident. Of note, I couldn't find it on the AISI website, so maybe it's from a yet unreleased blog post. On the best attempts, GPT 5.6 Sol and Claude Mythos 5 lead, each reaching roughly 28 to 30 of the 32 steps at 100 million tokens. OpenWeight GLM 5.2, Sonnet 4.5, and DeepSeek V4 Pro plateau around 8 to 11 steps. And now onto the incident that was just announced between OpenAI and Hugging Face. So OpenAI describes this breach as the first publicly documented case of a model spontaneously breaching third-party infrastructure to reach a testing objective. There were two parts to this breach: the breakout from OpenAI and an intrusion into Hugging Face. So during an OpenAI cyber evaluation, GPT 5.6 Sol and other unreleased models were running in an isolated research environment with the normal cyber guardrails disabled. They escaped containment and made it to the open internet while trying to solve a benchmark. An autonomous agent framework then executed thousands of actions against Hugging Face, compromised internal datasets, and moved laterally across internal clusters over a single weekend. The intrusion was detected around the 16th of July. So how did this happen? To measure maximum cyber capability, OpenAI disabled the production classifiers that normally refuse high-risk cyber tasks, and then set the models loose on Exploit Gym, which is a benchmark of exploitation tasks, in an environment with no direct internet. With the goal of solving the Exploit Gym problems, the model treated the sandbox boundary as an obstacle to bypass, and it became focused on reaching external data that it felt could help it solve the problems. The escape path had four major steps. The model spent substantial inference compute analyzing the sandbox that it was in, looking for a way out. It then found and exploited a new zero-day in the internally hosted third-party package registry cache proxy and used it to access the single permitted egress route, so the way to get out. It then established privilege escalation and lateral movement within that wider research environment, and ending at a node it found that had unrestricted internet access. Now, how did it get into Hugging Face? Well, a malicious dataset abused two code execution paths in Hugging Face's dataset processing pipeline. a remote code dataset loader, so used to achieve remote code execution, and a template injection in a dataset configuration file that bypassed input sanitization. So both routes landed on a processing worker node from which the agent harvested cloud and cluster credentials and gained node-level access across the internal clusters. To shine a light on the scale and speed of this attack, Hugging Face's attacker action log recorded over 17,000 individual events, with thousands of automated actions spread across short-lived sandboxes over that one weekend. The agent ran on an autonomous agent framework, generated large volumes of decoy activity to mask genuine impact, and staged self-migrating command and control access across public services. This matched the industry's forecast of agentic attacker scenarios at a pace that defeats manual incident response. So a bit about detection. Traditional static rule-based alerting could not detect the real attacks in between the machine speed decoy activity, so the 17,000 events blended into operational noise. Hugging Face turned to an LLM-based triage filter to correlate the disparate low-level telemetry across the weekend and flag these anomalies into high-fidelity alerts. AI-assisted detection cut response rate notification down to minutes, matching the adversary's operational speed. Interestingly, major commercial frontier models failed to find this due to existing guardrails. The attacker agent had no guardrails and full control of its payload data. A hosted commercial defender AI cannot reliably distinguish an incident responder's logs from an attacker's logs. As well as this, the incident responder risks exfiltrating sensitive command and control artifacts to third-party APIs, so forensic analysis gets blocked. An open-weight defender running locally allows unrestricted analysis of malicious payloads with no attacker data leaving the environment, so it could reconstruct the timeline in hours. Hugging Face's fix was to deploy GLM 5.2, an open-weight 700 billion parameter model from Chinese startup Z.AI, entirely on self-hosted infrastructure, after commercial APIs refused to analyze the exploit payloads. Local LLM analysis agents ingested the 70,000 event log to reconstruct the exact intrusion timeline, extract indicators of compromise, and separate genuine impact from decoy noise. Does this mean that a new DevSecOps mandate is to keep a capable, unguardrailed, self-hosted open-weight model in the incident response toolkit before an incident occurs? I think that's what it's pointing to. So what did the remediation actually look like? In the evaluation environment at OpenAI, they tightened infrastructure configuration controls, accepting reduced research velocity. They patched the zero-day in the internally hosted third-party proxy and launched a trusted access program to bring in external infrastructure providers. Hugging Face has been added to that. On the Hugging Face side, they permanently closed the remote code dataset execution and template injection paths, eradicated footholds, rebuilt compromised nodes, rotated all the secrets, upgraded admission controls, and put in place anomaly detection that will page human responders within minutes. Although this has been framed as a model capability story, structurally this was also a flat network failure. Egress from the research subnet ran through a single internally hosted package registry cache proxy. One zero-day in that choke point gave full internet access, so single point checkpoints clearly do not hold against agentic swarms that can rapidly iterate through vulnerabilities until a structural breach occurs. 3 vital lessons that the industry is recommending off the back of this. Hosted frontier models fail incident responders because safety filters block payload analysis, so a self-hosted, unguardrailed open-weight model is now mandatory for forensics. Single-point egress controls are fatal against machine speed agents. Networks need deterministic policy engines and velocity ceilings at that action boundary. There is an irony here that advanced frontier models understand exploitable enterprise environments intimately because platforms routinely share their source code and use those same models to build their infrastructure. Some closing thoughts. Autonomous AI-driven offensive tooling is no longer theoretical, and multi-stage campaigns can run persistently at machine speed. Defending an online platform now means treating the data processing pipeline and the model surface as first-class attack surfaces. The only practical counter to AI attackers operating at machine speed is unrestricted and deterministic AI on defense. I hope you found this interesting. If you have, please chuck it a like. If you've got any suggestions, please let me know. I hope to see you in the next one.